Hello everyone and welcome to Build Fix. This is episode number 12, my monthly series where I give you guys my up-to-date recommendations for how to choose the parts to build a gaming PC without breaking the bank. Now because it's February and because we're in the middle of a massive launch cycle and because consumer sentiment towards some of the products that have launched recently is not necessarily that optimistic, my job is actually harder this month than it has ever been before.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise. Tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet, sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. That's not supposed to be there. But let's get a few things straight. This series is proudly sponsored by PCPartPicker, and you can find links to the builds, or at least the specific build I'm talking about today, in the description down below. But I feel like for this episode we need to discuss context a bit more, because it was only about a month ago that I posted episode 11, where I was optimistically asking people what builds they're going to build with an RTX 5080 or RTX 5090 that launched back at the end of January. Our initial concerns about those cards were the performance and the availability, and while it turned out that the 5090 was the only card that managed to impress us in terms of performance, availability for all three of the cards that have launched so far, the 5090, 5080, and 5070 Ti, has been next to non-existent, which means any optimistic PC builders who are looking to build a system around those cards probably either wasn't able to buy one, or if they did, maybe they had to pay scalper pricing and pay 1.5 to 2 times the MSRP. That combined with additional problems that have come to light since the launch, which include black screen issues with some cards, continued distrust in the 12v2x6 connector that's powering the cards, especially the 5090, with potential melting problems, and most recently an issue that's been confirmed by Nvidia, which is that a certain quantity of cards, 0.5% according to them, have missing ROPs, or raster operations pipelines, a pretty fundamental part of the GPU that can result in a dip in performance by 4 to 6%. There's also been criticism aimed at Nvidia about dropping certain physics support with the RTX 50 series cards, which affects performance for some older games. Basically, there's a lot of good reason why consumers are not that happy with Nvidia right now, and even for the people who can get past that and still want to buy a card, many people just can't because none are in stock. So getting back to Build Fix proper, this is a look at last month's poll where there definitely was a lot of enthusiasm for AMD's RX 9070 and 9070 XT, which are supposed to launch in the first week of March. We only have about a week to wait for that, but there was still reasonably balanced enthusiasm, I'd say, for the Nvidia cards out there. Contrast that with February's poll and we can see the 9070 XT has jumped up to 62%, and that's even with me separating the RX 9070 out, which also got another 7%. So it looks like about 69% of you are really amped for AMD's launch, but we don't quite know what the price is yet. We should know within like 12 hours or so of this video going live. Meanwhile, the final confirmed card from Nvidia's first round of RTX 50 series launches, the RTX 5070, has dipped down to 5%, so we can see how people have really lost their enthusiasm for the 50 series launch. And meanwhile, there's plenty of you guys, close to a third, who are just gonna keep their money this time around. But I would say, hold out for the 9070 XT and 9070 reviews. They should be interesting. There is a silver lining to all this though, which is that despite the doom and gloom towards the upper end of the market and cards that cost $600–700 plus, there is still plenty of availability down in the lower end of the market. So for budget builders, you can still get up and running with a good system, and that is the build that I'm going to share with you guys today, the core components that I would match up with either a 9070, 9070 XT, or an RTX 5070 for those of you who are still interested in that. Then I'm going to talk about using PCPartPicker to look at some other stuff, like the state of the high-end graphics card market. To queue up our build though, KM Cornell23 said, I'd like to see a 9070 XT build. They've already got a 9800 X3D and a 7900 XTX, but they're just interested. And yes, I agree, the GPU market is quite the shit show right now. So here it is, my core parts for a 9070 XT or an RTX 5070 build. This would also be suitable for a 9070, or as I'll show you in a moment, any of the cards that cost sub $500 right now, where there are still a few deals to be had. The nice thing here is that we're only at $640 for the build minus a GPU, so add the cost of the GPU to that to get your final price, and I think we're gonna have some build options here that cost the same as a 5070 Ti by itself, or a 5080 if we want to give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room. A few comments on the parts I've picked here. We're starting with our CPU, the Ryzen 5 7600, 6-core AM5 processor, and this is the go-to starting out recommendation for anyone who doesn't have access to a 7400F or a 7500F. Those would also be good choices in this range, but they're a little bit harder to come by. This one's currently on sale for $185, and it comes with a CPU cooler in the box. The step up from here would be the 7600X, which is currently going for about $205 to $210. The X models do not come with a CPU cooler in the box, so you would need to add one on. Granted, the add-on CPU coolers do perform better and can run a little bit cooler, but that would add another $35 or so to the price, so if you're sticking to a budget, the 7600 will get you by just fine. And part of the reason we've gone with the AM5 platform here is that you have an upgrade path to something like a 7800X3D or a 9800X3D, which are the best CPUs for gaming right now. Or if you wanted to cross the system over to do something like content creation or production, you could easily swap to a 12-core like a 9900X, or we've also got the upcoming 9950X3D as well. For our motherboard, we have the very reasonably priced MSI Pro B650-S Wi-Fi. Comes in at just $140, and this board is the definition of gets the job done without a lot of extra bells and whistles. We have perfectly adequate power delivery. We have a couple M.2 slots for storage expansion. We have 4 DIMM slots for a variety of memory configurations. You don't get like a fixed I/O shield, but it does come with Wi-Fi built in. And you've even got some nice to have stuff like RGB headers and a front panel USB 3.2 Gen 2 connector. Rounding out the other 4 parts, we have a solid DDR5 memory kit. For this platform, you want DDR5 6000, maybe up to 6200 or 6400, but also with the lowest CAS latency possible, and I went with the G.Skill Flare X kit because that's AMD Expo compatible to easily plug in your memory speeds and get your system up and running. For storage, you should be able to find a 2TB NVMe SSD for less than $100. This model from Patriots is only $91. For a case, I've dropped in the Fantex XT Pro, which is a really solid case for around $60. It has good airflow, it looks good, it has enough space to fit all your components. This model only ships with a single 120mm fan, so you might consider adding some fans or going with the XT Pro Extreme, which ships with 3 RGB fans in the front. And also, I wish it had a USB 3.2 Gen 2 front panel connector, so consider a different case if that's something you need. Finally, for our power supply, we have a 750 watt unit, which should be enough to handle any of the mid-range graphics cards that are out right now, which includes the RTX 5070, and based on early rumors, that should be enough for a 9070 or a 9070 XT as well. Apart from the wattage, we want at least a base level efficiency rating, so this is 80 plus bronze. Do note that you can save $20 or $25 with a 650 watt unit, so if you're going with a lower end graphics card, you can shave off a few more dollars there. Just make sure you have enough wattage for the recommended power supply from the graphics card you choose. And then part of the reason I selected this graphics card, and if you're going AMD, you can ignore this and look for other graphics cards that don't have this, is it does have a 12V2x6 connector natively. It's a 300 watt one for this particular unit, so that's again something you want to compare with the GPU you choose and the power supply that you choose. But for any NVIDIA graphics card that has a dongle adapter with 2, but not 3 or 4 of the 8-pin PCI Express connectors on the other side, then this connector will work with your graphics card, and if you're wanting a little bit more peace of mind, going with a native plug I think is a good way to go. So those are the core components for a build minus a graphics card. So what graphics card options are out there? Well, let's take a look, and I'm kind of doing this live because I haven't looked at what's available for at least a few days now. Unfortunately, if we're looking at Intel Arc B570 or B580 GPUs, those aren't really available in the US. At least they're very overpriced. The mid $300 range is not what these GPUs should cost. It should be $250 or less for the B580, and it should be $220 or less for the B570. At those prices, you could drop one of these GPUs into your system and you'd have about a $900 total cost build, which is about what a 5070 Ti costs right now, but you'd have an entire system. So it looks like we're gonna have to fall back to Team Red, as we often do in this situation. So here are the groupings of GPUs in this range that I would at least take a look at the pricing for. And the good news is that there are cards in stock, and not all these are terribly overpriced, but just going down the line and looking at the cards that I know have a bit more performance versus the alternatives. But here are your best bets for now. A Radeon RX 6650 XT, which is an 8GB card for around $260. It's available, it's in stock over at Newegg, so that's like one of the greatest features that a graphics card can have right now. The 7600 XT is not always the best price to performance. This was a $400 MSRP card at launch, so the prices haven't come down that much. It does have a 16GB VRAM buffer, so if you're gonna get into AI or something like that that takes advantage of that, that might be a selling point. So yeah, at $375, this is only about 4 or 5% faster than than the 6650 XT, so I'd stick with the 6650 XT there. If you do want something a bit more powerful than the $300-ish range cards, the only other GPU that's currently in stock and available for a somewhat reasonable price is the 7800 XT. That card at around $500 is, again, not the best deal right now, but it apparently is a good enough deal that people are buying it because this Amazon listing has sold out. Our next step up from there is 30 bucks more for this XFX model for $530. And that one, again, has the glorious feature of you can add it to cart and actually purchase it. Okay, so to round things out for this episode, part of the reason I chose to just do sort of a core system that can be built upon with mid-range graphics cards is because the high-end market right now is absolutely abysmal in terms of pricing and availability. And although it's not the best use of PCPartPicker, that is something that you can also do here is quickly look and see, things are really screwed up right now. Case in point, if you're offended by the RTX 50 series launch, like the 5090, and you're like, I'm just gonna roll back to a 4090, well, they're currently starting at $3,200 each. No problem, you might say, I'll just switch to a 4080 Super. That should be around $1,000. Nope, $1,500 for your entry level there. Why even bother checking the 4080 non-super price? Here's a 4070 Ti Super, and again, this is part of NVIDIA's strategy, which is that they stopped production of the 40 series cards several months ago to switch over to production of the RTX 50 series cards. And that wouldn't be a big deal if there were enough RTX 50 series cards to go around right now, but we don't know what's going on with that inventory. If the yields are just so poor that there's just that few cards on the market, or if they're being rationed out at a slow pace to artificially inflate the price on the secondary market, really just quite ridiculous. Even like the 4070 Super, which was one of the best mid-range options if you wanted to pay the NVIDIA tax for the 40 series, should sell for $600 or less. $750 right now, not worth the $150 markup in my opinion. I will say that these aren't marked up quite as bad as they were a week or two ago though, but I know that's not saying much. Meanwhile, the 5090, not available. 5080, about an $800 markup over the $1,000 MSRP. And the most recently launched 5070 Ti, $1,265 for the $750 MSRP card. Sure, NVIDIA, sure. But I guess that leaves us to wait until tomorrow for the RX 9070 and RX 9070 XT announcement, where we'll hopefully finally hear the price, and hopefully the price won't be terrible. And then the following week we'll see reviews come out for all three of these cards, the 9070, 9070 XT, and the RTX 5070, and that should be a big battle, followed by the actual for sale date, where we'll find out how quickly stock will dry up. There is some reporting that the 5070 might be available in much higher quantities than the 5070 Ti and up, but I don't know. Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me three times, NVIDIA. They'll probably continue to fool us in the future. But that's all for this video. Once again, a huge thank you to PCPartPicker for sponsoring this series. If you guys enjoyed it, then leave me a comment in the comment section down below. And you can also check out the description for links to the parts list, links to the individual parts, and a link to my store at paulshardware.net, where you can buy yourself some high quality merchandise, shirts, hoodies, pint glasses, and more. Thank you guys once again for watching this video, and we'll see you all in the next one.